Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another fantastic episode of Foxborough Central. I'm your host, Bob Hickey. Thank you for taking the time to join me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. Now, for those of you who are fans of this show, or even those of you who are just randomly acquainted with this show, you also perhaps know that I am a columnist for the Foxborough Reporter, our local weekly newspaper that brings you all the news that you ever want to know about the local events. And it's really a piece of our community. It is it's a gem in and of itself, because whether you agree or disagree, you cannot argue that it is so wonderful that we have a local voice, a local press, because not many communities can say that anymore in this day and age of consolidation and cutbacks, particularly in the newspaper industry. So how cool is it that we not only have a paper, but that we have our own reporter? And so I welcome Barra Dunal. Barra, nice to meet you. Bob, as always. Nice to meet you here and introduce you to our friends in Foxborough Central. Now, folks who go to town meetings or who are around town know that you didn't just walk in yesterday. You've been with us now for what, 9 months?
No, actually, this is going to be a year in September.
Oh my goodness.
September 1st is going to be my 1 year anniversary in Foxborough.
Well, happy anniversary.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, so don't jinx me.
But by the time they see it on TV, it just might have.
That is correct.
That's right. And writing for a weekly newspaper, of course, you're used to writing and projecting a few days in advance as to what's going to be current news. So
exactly.
It's an interesting approach as you try to envision, all right, 3 days from now when this goes to press and people read it, where are we going to be at? And that's got to be something that's a challenge, and at the same time, is it really news? So let's start off there. You are a reporter.
I'm a reporter, and actually it's actually a really good topic to start off on, because with the exception of doing about 3 months of daily work in my old company, I've been a weekly newspaper reporter for now more than for more than a 5-year stretch, if you don't count the time between my old company and my new company.
Okay.
There was a downsizing, and I was about a group of about 10 people that got laid off from said company. But aside from that stretch, since May of 2011, I have been a full-time newspaper reporter. I haven't held any other full-time jobs. I'm a full-time weekly newspaper reporter with the exception of 3 months at the Oneonta Daily Star.
So you come to us as a veteran, and you come to us, as a veteran, and we're very glad that you are here. And I got to tell you, as an aside, Obviously, I read the Foxborough Reporter, and I found the reporting to be very fresh and very real, and you bring a super different slant to just the attitude of the types of stories. So it's really cool to read the different things that you find interesting, because I know that with this program, Foxborough Central, who are the guests? Well, it's who I find interesting.
Exactly.
And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, maybe viewers agree. But on a weekly newspaper, it's so imperative to get it right, because you only have one shot each week. You only have 52 shots a year to get it right. So there's a little bit of pressure that goes into it, in addition to the creativity and just the nuts and bolts investigative journalism and reporting the news. So I love the idea of reporting. I'm so glad you came in here to talk to us.
Of course. I mean, and again, on the subject of weeklies, which is, again, my bread and butter, my specialty, and weirdly enough, even though I have some friends who studied journalism, I wasn't one of my friends in college who studied journalism, but for whatever reason, a lot of us are ending up in media one way or another. And a lot of it's online media, or they do freelancing, and some of us do weeklies. But my corner of turf, my speciality is weekly newspapers. And the nice thing about weeklies is that, with the internet, and especially if you partner with a daily, like which we do at the Sun Chronicle, if something is fast breaking, you can be first on it. And I've been first at weeklies through either our websites or our daily all-day ones. I mean, this is my third company now. That being said, that's not the overall philosophy of a weekly newspaper, because you basically give up first. And first is what so much news has become about. And a lot of times first means you lose accuracy, or you miss the forest of the trees, or God forbid, you end up really putting someone in a very uncomfortable position. I mean, whenever you hear of oftentimes a terrorist attack or a shooting, a lot of times there's just some poor schmuck who was not involved whatsoever but had a similar name or a similar ethnic profile, who for a few hours in the 24-hour news cycle ends up like getting death threats and stuff because, in the effort to get first, you do it. And, I'm not here to pile on to reporters because, we're doing our job. It's a difficult industry, et cetera, but that's not the world I operate in. I operate in the world where you acknowledge that you're probably not going to be first on something, but what you are going to be is you're going to do it, you're going to tell it best. Like, even if somebody else has put it up on the internet or done a small article on it, you're going to get the chance, if it's an important story, to do a longer article, a more in-depth one, to talk to more people, and to really just like drill down to it. It's kind of like mini magazine writing, if you will. I'm not saying that, the Foxborough reporter is like the New Yorker or anything like that, but it is.
It's better. I said it. There you go.
Apologies to Connie Nast. But yeah, no, I mean, it does allow for drilling down into it, and I think with these small towns or even with the larger communities, there is value in that. There's value in that type of journalism. There's value in the fast break and getting things out immediately. There's also value in this is what happened this past week, and this is all we can tell you about it in very clear detail and very accurate detail.
Great. I'm with Barry Donow, who is the reporter with the reporter. I love saying it that way.
I do too.
The reporter with the reporter. And he mentioned that the breaking news can be posted online, and we have seen that. You go to the website www.foxboroughreporter.com, and you can of course catch breaking news, but then the full article is written, full column is written. I do the columns, you do the articles.
Yeah.
Is written in the Thursday paper. So one of the nice things about that, and you mentioned being able to go long form. I love it because you do get to go in, and there's the multiple pages, and you're able to continue on in the story, and the story goes on. And there are other pieces that you won't get in a quick flash and on the front page. So
exactly.
I love the Foxborough Reporter for what that brings to us. Now, in your time here, and it's been 1 year, which is really cool. Time does fly.
It does, actually.
What are your first impressions of Foxborough?
So I ended up taking this job because after getting another good job offer as well. I had a good job offer from here and a good job offer from a daily paper up in Watertown, New York. And both companies are excellent, and both gave me very good offers. And I ended up choosing Foxborough because I really like Bill Stedman, who is a wonderful partner. I like the community, and for the most part, I really like the location as well. I have family and friends out in the New England area. I went to Hampshire College out in Western Massachusetts, so a lot of my people are either originally from this area and then they went back here after college, or they moved out here.
I was going to say, or else they migrated east, and this is where the jobs are. Sure.
Exactly, and so there was an opportunity to be in a more cosmopolitan setting. I mean, beforehand, the previous weekly I was at was the Cooperstown Crier in Cooperstown, New York, which is near where the Baseball Hall of Fame is.
Absolutely.
And also where the Farmers Museum is, Glimmerglass Festival, Brewery Ommegang. A lot of really good stuff, and it's near where I grew up, and so I had friends and connections, and it was a really great area. But at the same time, it's even in a college town, which Oneonta, which is where I lived, which is like right next to Cooperstown. It's a college town with SUNY Oneonta and Hartwick. So, there were things going on and there was a lot of activity. But even in that, each year I was, I'm a young guy. I'm also a young and unmarried guy. So I was like, you know what? As I beginning to enter my 30s in like 3 years it was at that point, I think it would be nice to be in a city or closer to cities where I can meet more people and just go into stuff. Because before I was in Cooperstown, I was also out in the Berkshires, and again, I like rural areas. I'll probably end up moving out to them.
I was going to say it's beautiful out there, but there's not a lot of
things to do.
Yeah, the sidewalks, if there are sidewalks, they roll up at 5 o'clock.
Exactly.
How cool is that here in Foxborough? Because you're equidistant between Providence and Boston, plus with all the different towns and communities and events going on. There's a lot in the arts. There's a lot of sports, obviously. And depending upon what your bent is, there's a lot of different cool things like comedy and live shows, and then it's a cool place to be.
It's a really cool place to be, and I mean, I chose Foxborough in many ways because of the location, and also because I had a lot of faith in Bill, and also the reporters won many awards, and I knew that and also Frank had been there for 28 years, about 27 years.
Former reporter Frank Mortimer.
Former reporter Frank Mortimer at the Foxborough Reporter. And so, as big shoes to fill, but at the same time, that's a level of commitment to an employee and commitment to an institution, both on both on the part of the community and on the part of the employer. But I've got to say, being in Foxborough, I came in here with high expectations, and it really exceeded them. And the main thing, because in many ways the community was like a blank slate. Like I had an idea of what it was, but you don't really know until you're in it. And I gotta say that Foxborough is a really interesting place. There's a lot of news that happens here. Some of it of the darker variety, of course, with the awful child sexual abuse cases, but also a lot with the lighter variety too. There's a lot of charity here. People take care of people take care of each other, and there's a real community feel. And it sounds hokey to say that, but it's, I think, very true. And again, I'm not saying the community here is perfect by any means, but it is one where that feeling of banding together of community institutions and of democracy, quite frankly, is really quite strong. Because there is a lot of people who volunteer and are involved in the democratic process here, as well as through just community groups. I mean, I think one of the cool things about New England in general, and Foxborough epitomizes this, is that charity and helping out your community is not divorced from your government a lot of times. It is something that goes, oftentimes it's hand in hand. People see the state, if you will, if you're going to use some theoretical stuff, is something that you have access to, you can have control over, and that you can bend it towards a more charitable ends.
That's a great observation. I've said it many times on this program, and you've heard it countless times before, I'm sure, from others. But the fabric of our community really is interwoven, and the government partnership, if you will, with the charitable side. We say laughingly, but it is true that Foxborough is built on the backs of our volunteers. And, for example, here at Foxborough Cable Access,
which is a great place. Well, the fact of the matter is you guys do fantastic work.
Well, but it's fun, it's a labor of love, but so must be writing for a weekly newspaper, because it's certainly not the claim and prizes you're going to win, say, writing for the New York Times or for the Los Angeles Times or for the Houston Chronicle. You really have to want to be here and dig into the minutia and learn the community, because, as you say, Foxborough has news going on, and to the Foxborough reporters' credit, they did not back down. They were not afraid to write about, you mentioned darkness to light and the child sexual abuse. Those are issues that need to be told, and if we didn't have a local press, who would tell them? And so it's cool that you're the one that's now responsible for doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's true. And I mean, what's one of the nice things about the Reporter is that we're given a lot of freedom by our parent company, and we're also given a lot of support. I mean, you mentioned the website, and I know I'm a bit of a broken record on Foxborough discussion when I say this, but the fact of the matter is that at the moment, we don't have any kind of paywall and stuff, and you can get all of our content for free. But what I always tell people is that if you want to, and this isn't because we're doing bad, but we're actually doing quite well. Our brand is good. We have strong readership. We have strong revenue. I'm paid a living wage. That's one of the reasons why I moved out here. But at the same time, that's all made possible by the fact that at the moment we have people who subscribe and also people who buy ads. But in terms of at least to me, what is the most important thing in terms of the connection with the community is that people subscribe. So even if you're going to read it all for free, I encourage you, if you like what you see in the Reporter, get a subscription. It is 75 cents a paper, basically, if you put it out. If you're a senior citizen, it's $52 in change for a 2-year subscription. It's so little money for basically ensuring that you have a watchdog here and you have someone who's going to report on good things like graduation. I put in a lot of hours to make sure we had a really nice graduation issue, or bad things.
It was very nice this year, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes,
it was a pleasure. The school system here is great. But yeah, so there's good things like that. There's also just necessary things. I mean, it's been a pleasure covering the Board of Selectmen. It's also great covering the school committee. But you need somebody watching there. I mean, there's fortunately been no malfeasance that I have seen since coming on to here. I mean, people may disagree about policies or votes, et cetera, but I don't think anyone in a right state of mind can really accuse the board of corruption at this point in time, which is not a given by any means. Like,
No, it's not. And part of
you
the
need to have someone watching to make sure that that's the case.
I was just going to say, one of the reasons why, and I used to be a selectman here as well, and as did former editor Jeff Peterson. So, perhaps it's more in the family than what we actually project. But there's a real reason why we take pride in our government here in Foxborough. It's because we are all part of it. And at some point, many of us who are watching, and most of us who care about town government and know these things, have volunteered at some point along the line, even if it's for what some might consider a minor committee. But for whatever committee it was, it's a major need, or else the committee wouldn't have existed. So it's a great way to give back to the community, to participate and be part of it, but also, as you say, and again, we're going to cycle back to Foxborough Cable Access with Frank McDowell, who, for example, does most of our video work at the meetings and attends the meetings and makes sure that they're brought to the viewers. The work you do is so important in making sure that the light is shining. And as a columnist, I have the wonderful advantage of not having to attend, because I get to watch the recap on cable access. So I get to read the recap in the Foxborough Reporter, and then I get to opine. So, who am I and what value do I bring? I don't know, but you're the front line. You're the one who goes out there and actually watches it, reads the feeling in the room, the nuances, and captures whatever's missing, and you dig it. So good for you for doing that.
Thank you. And it's interesting because, don't get me wrong, there are some times where meetings are about as dry as watching paint on the wall, and you have to scrape it up to report. But on a whole,
I love this kid's honesty. Come on, folks, let's give it up for Barra.
I mean, I'd say that I want to say some words, but I don't want to swear on your television show. But
we are on before 10 o'clock, and according to FTC, we're not supposed to do that before 10 o'clock at night.
But the fact of the matter is that I like shooting straight with people, and it's been always my thing. But in general, a number of my friends, I think, really who do journalism, either haven't or don't like doing meeting reporting. And I got to be perfectly honest with you, although there can be some really dull meetings, I like it as a whole. I enjoy it. And one of the reasons why is that when I cover debates, especially, or political controversies, or whatever, my thing that I pride myself on is that I try to take myself out of it. Out of it as much as I can, and then I just make it so that everyone gets to be quoted accurately, and everyone gets to put their position forward accurately, which is really important, and which I think is key. And I take pride on the fact that there have been a number of controversies in the 3 different institutions I've been a part of where I've covered it, and there have been multiple sides, and sometimes I've had some personal feelings about the controversies. A lot of times I haven't at all. But at the end of the day, everyone really ended up liking the reporting because I just go by that mantra. And I think it's also just as a little, if I may segue stuff, in terms of taking personal things out of it.
I love segues.
I love them too.
I'm the king of segues, so let's go with your segue first.
So, which is that, as a journalist, I believe in truth, and I believe in objectivity. But I think it's a myth / also I think kind of a dangerous thing to assume that journalists themselves don't have opinions or feelings or whatever. To say that you don't have it, or to or to assume that people really aren't engaged, at least in their personal life and things, is, I think, it's disingenuous.
I was just going to say disingenuous is the word, because it can't possibly be that we have no opinion, no matter what the issue is.
Exactly.
But the skill is to not let that bleed into, not let the bias bleed into, and we all have bias.
Exactly, we all have
but
bias.
Let it bleed into the work that we do, and it's a profession, and it's definitely, reporting. It's supposed to be dry, but it also has to be interesting. In order to do that, you have to have personality. But if you have personality, you have bias. But then how do we keep the bias? It's such a push-pull.
And it's interesting. I think it's probably because I'm someone who can be very, very prone to strong emotions and to thinking about issues, that I come from, and I've relaxed a little bit, but I come from you do it dry. Because the fact of the matter is that if you wanted my opinion on it, if you wanted little snarky asides, I'd be writing a column on this.
You'd be on page 4 with me.
Exactly. And I have written columns and stuff for our paper and stuff. I have done things where it has been in first person, whether it was one on Star Wars or going into that burning building. Sometimes those things are fun and appropriate. But at the end of the day, especially if I'm covering something where there's a lot of different dogs in a fight, people should be able to decide by having the best speakers for a cause speak for themselves. Like when I cover a meeting, I try to get like the best, and when the selectmen are arguing, I try to get the best quotes from each of the people involved possible. Why? Because I think that at the end of the day, you should be able to judge people by their own words and by their own actions. And so that's why, so that's how I look at it. And also in terms of, like bias or opinion, whatever, like, I pull myself out of it. And then also, I don't feel, there's also many different schools of this by any means, but I'm kind of the school that, like, I don't involve myself, I don't live in town, I don't involve myself in town politics, and fortunately, Foxborough is like kind of allows me to have a bit of an opinionated life outside of town politics. But even that being said, even though I don't involve myself, I feel that, it's important that people do know my biases. Because a lot of times people like to pretend that they don't exist whatsoever, and I think it's a lot more genuine. Again, you avoid conflicts of interest. Like, if I lived, for instance, if I was dating somebody, I wouldn't cover someone I was dating, or if I had a business, someone was involved in business, I wouldn't do it. Et cetera, et cetera. I don't involve myself with political campaigns in town. These are all things that you do to avoid conflicts of interest.
Right.
But in terms of like personal biases or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Again. You shouldn't, I feel like, hide them as much as some people do. And again, that's a hot topic over in journalism. If there is an article by Glenn Greenwald, who runs The Intercept, where he talks about his difference of opinion on that and how he likes his journalists to, the freedom he gives his journalists in order to like have opinions and talk about things as opposed to the way the New York Times does it. Glenn Greenwald famously was one of the people that Edward Snowden gave his cache of stuff to when he was writing for The Guardian at the time.
Interesting.
And the reason why that came up is that he's been someone who is very vocal about privacy about privacy rights and such. And that's one of the reasons why Snowden gave it to him. And Glenn Greenwald was saying if he'd been hit, or the editor of the New York Times was saying if he'd been Glenn Greenwald's editor, he wouldn't have had him on it. And so when he founded The Intercept, which was after the Snowden thing happened, he was like, I think it's just disingenuous to say that people don't have strong opinions on things or not to express it. I think it's better that you just have the biases out in the open, and then you can see how that is affecting someone's reporting.
Right, and that's of course great if you're in a position where you're trying to espouse that, but of course, on the flip side, if you're reading it and you're reading not the news, but you're reading into the news more than what the news itself is, and you've sort of lost the whole purpose of news reporting.
Oh, definitely.
And you've created that, so it's an interesting argument to be made.
It's a push and pull. It's fun because I come on I guess I kind of have like a median position where I think the news itself should be dry, but I think that but I'm less in favor of like the shackles and like the theater, if you will, of pretending that the people who created are dry. Like I think I prefer wet journalists who make dry content, and then if you see some wetness in it, you can say, oh, it was probably because so and so is like so and so, because again, wetness is going to bleed into the dryness regardless. It would be better if you had like, instead of like this whole like shadowy thing of like, oh, who is controlling which thing or whatever, it's like, oh no, this is where so-and-so's coming from. This is where so-and-so's paper is coming from.
That is so cool the way you phrased it. And of course I'm here at Barrington now, and we have not even begun to scratch the surface, and we're almost out of time. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, pointed questions, and we're going to get some answers. Of course, with the Foxborough reporter of the reporter, for the reporter, Barrington now, you can reach him at their offices at 508-543-4852, but he also has a cell number. If you have late breaking news or you want to get a hold of him and tell him something really cool that's going on around town, you can reach him at 607-644-7836. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Every once in a while I get it right.
You're all welcome to use my cell phone number at any time. I give it out and it's on my cards because, I'm one person covering 17,000 people, and I feel that I should be available to that populace.
So now you mentioned having a personal life, and I always used to shake my head with amazement at all the meetings that the reporter, because again, we are a small weekly, that the reporter for the reporter would be at. And, tell me how big of a burden do you feel it is covering the different meetings, and are you feeling as though you have a nice work-life balance? And I ask this because I like you and I want you to stay. I don't want you to get burned out after 6 months.
You know, my previous paper, I did not have as good of a work-life balance, and in many ways that was due to the fact that we just didn't have enough of the weekly, which was ended up getting cut down from 2 people to 1 person after I was let go, along with other people at the daily. But we were not supported enough, and I feel the exact opposite here.
Really?
I feel like Bill is on 2 weeks of vacation right now. I'm in the middle of week 2. And I just feel perfectly supported. When Bill is here, I feel incredibly supported. And yeah, if everything from again, being paid a living wage to having a very responsive paper to having a paper that's respected in the community and a good overall family, I really like that. And in terms of work stuff on burnout, I have general power over setting my own hours, and it's basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Is shoulder to the wheel, nose to the grindstone.
Because we do
not
come out, yep.
Not a lot of stuff gets done. Generally rack up hours there, and then it's things are a little easier, and it's more like reporting and decompressing Thursday and Friday.
We are so almost out of time. I'm going to now beg you a question. You're young, you're single, you're here, you're halfway between Providence and Boston. What does Bear Janelle like to do in his off time?
What do I like to do in my off time? Well, I like to eat. I like to cook, and I take judo here in Foxborough, which is excellent. We have an excellent judo club here.
And that'll help you at some of the meetings. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, that would be unfair to people. But no, and I like playing board games. I play Magic cards, which is kind of like a nerdy cross between poker and chess. So I often will travel out of state for that. And yeah, I also write creatively. I'm working on a screenplay at the moment.
Really?
So, yeah. Oh. I have a lot of different. I also just
Man of many interests.
Man of many interests. I like to just travel out and see a number of my friends and family. So, to me, what I enjoy a lot is that this job does give me a lot of work flexibility, and in order to pursue that, and I feel like I have a good, strong work-life balance.
That's phenomenal.
Which is made possible by the fact that it's a great institution that, as I've said, is supported by the people of Foxborough.
Last question.
Of course.
Heavy on my mind. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I would say that I think it's going to be, I love them both dearly, and the new Star Wars movie, as anyone who read my column, I thought was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to go with Star Trek simply because...
I like this kid. I like this guy.
The reason why is that, Star Wars is great theater. It also uses, the hero's journey beautifully with some fantastic acting and mind-blowing special effects early on, and then continue on, and the effects in the next latest one are phenomenal. But at the end of the day, what Star Trek is that it is... you're using, in the context of a television show, exploring real, serious, interesting philosophical and social issues.
I was going to say the social messages from the 60s that still resonate today, it's there.
And the new film is actually pretty good because, the previous 2 in the reboot films, the first one was good but wasn't really a Star Trek movie. The second one was not so good and wasn't really a Star Trek movie. This one, I think in many ways, because it was written by Simon Pegg, who did Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and The World's End, was also a terrific actor, and he plays Scotty. He was one of the writers, and he clearly loves him some Star Trek, so it feels like a Star Trek movie, which is hard to do. There's only, even with the original crews from Next Gen or the original series, there's only a handful of them that I think that truly feel Star Trek. And this one, it's a great action movie. Justin Lin, who did the Fast and the Furious movie, he directed it. So the action's great, but it also feels, I take it you saw it as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you would also agree that it feels like a Star Trek movie.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you feel like a real reporter, you feel like part of the Foxborough fabric, and we thank you for taking the time to join us here in Foxborough Cable Access, Foxborough Central. We're so out of time. I want to thank you, Barry, now.
Thank you
and
much.
People can get a hold of you, of course, at your cell number, 607-644-7836. Do not call him up to yell at him about me. Call me up to yell at me about it. Call him up if you want to take me to the next Star Trek movie, or you want to talk about late breaking news, or about something of interest in the community you think he should be a part of.
Exactly.
Foxborough Report is here for you. You should get a subscription if you don't have one already by now. We are out of time. Have a great day, Foxborough. Take care.